We're live.
We're live.
Today, we talk about another ancient mystery, which is the Yonaguni Monument. And it's interesting because this is a recent discovery,
Right.
barely discovered in 1986, right?
Correct.
So there's not a lot out there uh, that I was able to find in doing some of the research. It's very difficult uh, to find good information on it, but nonetheless, it's very interesting. And so, where do you want to start? Where
Well,
it's
it's in
located?
Japan,
Yeah.
off the coast of Japan, so that everybody gets kind of like a geographical, right?
Hmm.
So it's off the coast of Japan. It was found in 1986. They were looking for hammerhead sharks, and they ended up finding this huge platform, and everybody has been intrigued about it ever since. And to be honest with you, not until I started preparing for this podcast did I realize how controversial it is.
Mm.
It's extremely controversial.
Yeah, yeah, because one argument is that it's man-made
Right.
because of the way that it looks, and we'll get into that. The other argument is that it's not natural, the formation, and so
No, that it is.
that it is natural. So
Right.
one argument is that it's man-made.
Man made,
The other one is saying it's natural.
it's natural.
Um, in preparation, one of the videos, and I do research through video, through also articles and things like that, BBC and all these different areas. And one of them was Bright Insight, which is Jimmy Corsetti, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the things that he said is, if this is natural, show me one other natural formation like this one underwater. Just show me one other one.
Right.
And in the preparation, there was a really good documentary, which I'll link, of these divers. A marine biologist goes down, really interesting. And he consults with Robert Schoch, which I have a lot of respect for. I know you do too.
Absolutely.
And I believe he's a geologist, right?
Yes, he is.
And Robert Schoch says, hey, this is natural. And the reason is because the type of rock that it is called
Sandstone.
sandstone. And um, he took this marine biologist to a site 100 meters away. I'm not sure what distance away. Maybe it was 1,000 meters. I don't remember, but
Nearby.
it was nearby, that basically looked very similar above ground.
Right.
And he was able to say, look, this is natural. This is what sandstone does. You're in an area that has a lot of earthquakes, tsunamis, and so these breaks are natural. So what do you say to Robert Schoch on that?
Well,
Because we respect him a lot, especially for the work he's done on the Sphinx, which we've talked about in another podcast.
correct. So actually, the research for this, and for those of you that don't know, he does his own research, like he says on his side, I do mine.
Yeah,
And then we come together without comparing our notes, and then we sit down.
yeah.
And a lot of the times we're in agreement, but several times we're not. So I'm here to tell you that I was a little disappointed because before I started doing all the research, I was very much biased in the fact that I thought this was definitely man made.
Yeah,
And a big portion of me still thinks that it is.
yeah.
The problem I have now is that documentary with Robert Schoch, and I have a great deal of respect for him. He's a scientist, he's a geologist, he has a degree from Boston University, and I think he's got a couple degrees. And I believe that he's a man of integrity. And the reason I say that is because Robert Schoch and John Anthony West are the ones that came up with the well, John Anthony West is the one that came up with the idea that the Sphinx was weathered by water, not sand. Okay? And from what I hear, the way the story goes is he looked around, John Anthony West looked around for someone in the scientific uh,
Community.
community, and he found this geologist. And he said, hey, Let me show you something. And what he did was he got a picture of the Sphinx and he covered the face. And he only showed the part of the body, but it doesn't look like the body. It just looks like weathering, right? And he showed portions of it. And he says, listen, if you were to look at this, what would you think this weathering be like? And Robert Schoch said, oh, without a doubt, that is water
Erosion.
erosion. And then he took the cover off and showed him it was the Sphinx, and he said, oh, wow. But yet he stuck to his guns, and he's been under horrific fire, and uh, the archaeological community, you know,
Because of that
because of that.
claim with the Sphinx.
Correct. So he's not one to shy away from conflict. He stood by his word and his ethics and his integrity, and he's taken shots. They call him a pseudoscientist, and from there above,
Yeah.
that he doesn't know what he's doing,
But
and
he's actually a geologist,
he
so he is
is.
a scientist.
And he did a conference many years ago, and he brought in geologists, and all the geologists that he brought in concurred with him that it's water erosion on the Sphinx and not sand.
Hmm.
Now let's get back to Yanaguni. He's not one to say something that he doesn't believe in just to avoid the shots.
Right.
You see what I mean? And I know his history. I've read an awful lot about him, and
So it says a lot.
it says a lot. So I wish that he was in our camp, which is, I still have a tendency to believe that this is something man-made.
To
To
be clear on what he does say though, he says that it could have been natural. It doesn't mean that men did not alter it in some fashion or use
Correct.
it, uh but because it is definitely unique.
Right.
It's not he's saying if it, let's say, he believes it's natural,
Mm-hmm.
but there's nothing else out there like it.
No.
So he says it's very possible that men use this natural uh structure, right? Monument or whatever the case.
Yeah.
So it's a
And he
combination at
so
that
he
point.
he puts up a good case. He says, "Look, our ancestors were not dumb.
Yeah.
They weren't stupid. So if they found a natural formation
Yeah.
that they could utilize to venerate or, you know,
Yeah.
make a castle out of it or whatever because it was just a strong, natural formation." So he makes that case.
But when you look at the footage and you see the lines that are straight lines,
I know they're right angles, actually.
they're right
They're right
angles,
angles.
and what looks to be steps,
Right.
and what looks to be
Like a turtle.
like a turtle. I mean, the cuts do not. It looks like somehow this was
Yeah,
altered.
so the turtle is rudimentary cut, more or less, but
Yeah.
it's still the form of a turtle. So how does nature, you know, do this and make a turtle?
Yeah.
So I'm still believing that it's man-made. Okay?
Graham Hancock has gone 200 dives down there, he claimed on the Rogan podcast, and he said it's definitely man made.
It's definitely man-made.
So he doesn't agree with Shock's,
No.
what Shock believes.
And what happens, so that our viewers understand, this is a very, very dangerous dive. And the reason for it is because you have a lot of currents in the area that become powerful in that particular area, and they will sweep you away like a leaf in the wind. That
Hmm.
was the description. I'm being moved around down here like a leaf in the wind, so you're fighting the current all the time,
Yeah.
and you are uh, trying to stay alive, essentially.
And you're trying to observe
Right.
this
It,
monument.
correct. And so what happens, the argument is that Robert Schoch is not a good underwater diver, okay? And when he was down there, he was literally not being able to pay too much attention to the monument because of the fact that he's striving to stay with it outside of the current, inside of the current. Basically, you're struggling to have control
Yeah.
down there. And so that's one of the things that they're saying. But there is a Professor Kamura, that he's been cataloging things apparently for close to 20 years on this particular site. And he has a rock that they found there, okay? And there's a cross on this rock, and it has two holes, and he holds it like he venerates it. You know, it's in a nice little box, it's covered with cloth, and in order to pick it up, he puts gloves on and so forth. And he says, look, I found this there. This was found there. I'm not saying he did. And he's saying, look, this is a man-made, this is a cross. You can see it clear as day that this is a cross, and there are two holes between it. This is definitely man-made, and this was found there. And so if you ask him, he would stake his life saying, look, this is definitely man-made. Okay?
Yeah.
There's also that face. I don't know if you came across that face that has like two eyes and a nose
A mouth.
and a mouth, and they're very symmetrical in the carvings, and they have the same depth. And so,
It looks to be a face. Also, it looks to be a there looks to be some writings,
right,
carvings on the
seems
monument
to
as
be,
well, but it's hard to see. And
and it's been underwater for a few thousand years. So,
yeah,
you know, the salt water is gonna
yeah,
deteriorate some of that. So, um, I'm a little disappointed because coming into this, I was gung ho for sure that this is man-made.
yeah,
Now I have a little bit of doubt just because I know Robert Schoch, I follow his career, I follow his pain with what he did with the Sphinx, and he's not on our camp. He's not on our side. He's saying, look, this is sandstone. And I also read the article where he takes this other guy to that location above water.
yes.
And he says, look, this is what happens. You have these flat bits that get formed because this is typical of sandstone. This is typical of this and
I
that.
hear you. I hear and I respect what he has to say. But when I look at the pictures, um, it doesn't go in line with everything
I
Robert
agree.
Schoch is saying,
I agree.
because you look at some of these, and we'll put them, you know,
I know. How does nature do that?
we'll link
Those
them.
stepping stones.
Yeah,
That's a great picture to link up, okay?
yeah, we'll put these pictures, because one thing that in the research was that um, it wasn't a step pyramid, which
Right.
are common. There's a lot of step period pyramids,
Yes.
and so that was one theory, that it was maybe a step pyramid.
Correct.
Um,
And on the
so
top part of the temple,
mhm,
there is what seems to be a drainage channel.
yeah,
And you know, I'm big on drainage stuff.
yeah,
All you have to do is look at our Kailasa Temple podcast and the Angkor Wat podcast.
that's that picture, which looks like a channel.
It look. I mean,
So if
no,
this
it doesn't look like a channel. It is a
it
channel.
is a
It
channel,
is a
and
channel.
then the
Was it made
separation.
by the water, the currents or not? That's a channel, no matter
Yeah,
how you cut it or slice
I think that
it.
in just the research, and we're obviously interested. You've been interested in mysteries, ancient mysteries forever,
Yeah,
and the argument here is that there was at one point a civilization that could um, that was advanced, that was able to build these things, cut stones, the, and there was a lot older than what people thought,
right.
and they maybe had tools, more tools than more advanced than what people thought. Like when we went into the Kailasa temple, um, this was a structure that was cut down into a mountain, and it's one stone,
One monolithic stone.
one
Yeah,
monolithic stone. And so, how did they do that with a hammer and chisel, which is what they argue?
it's impossible.
So,
I don't care what any archaeologist says. I have my own opinion on things, you know?
well, yeah, I mean,
I'm not an expert in nothing, but I don't care what they say.
but it's kind of
You're not
like
getting, yeah.
they're making it. It doesn't. It goes against common sense.
Absolutely.
There was something.
Just get a hammer and chisel yourself and try to do something and see how hard that is. And how many years is that going to take you? And forget the carving down straight, but what about all the artwork? all the statues that are on the walls and so forth, and how
Right.
intricate they are.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk to your blue in the face. You're not going to convince me, but that's my conviction on it.
Yeah.
But this thing, um, I'm still you know in the belief that it's man-made. Okay.
Or like Shock said, maybe a combination of both.
Yeah.
That seems like that's the thing. He's open. He's open to the idea,
Right.
you know. But so you think it's still man-made?
I do. I think that there was an ancient society there that if they didn't make it all on their own, this was a site that was there and they manipulated the site to fit their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think. The other thing that the other thing that was interesting was that this tour guide put out an article, and he's also got some videos out there saying, "Look, this is a scam. And the reason everybody's saying that it's man-made is because the level of tourism that has come to this island is insane. And people are coming here just to look at this monument and dive off the coast of Japan, which I think is also close to Taiwan, right? But and he's saying the level of tourism has skyrocketed and has remained constant because of this mystery that they have been able to spin around this rock, which is, you know, it's a natural form rock, but there's just way too much money that's being generated. You got tours and you got this and you got movies. The people come to this little tiny island, which was totally unknown until 1986. And then since that discovery and that mysterious thing, you've had an influx of historians, archaeologists, people
Yeah.
like Graham Hancock.
Divers.
Graham Hancock has done 200 dives, like you say, in that location.
Yeah.
So, this guy put up a good argument, saying, hey, the money that is being generated by this is huge.
But
It's,
but the pictures,
you're going,
even if he's right, I can only imagine actually going there and seeing it for yourself. And that's one thing the marine biologist said, and we'll link that video. He said that no matter what,
it's a
this is
unique
this is an amazing,
location.
yeah, it's an amazing thing to see and be in front of, whatever the answer is. And he, unfortunately, the video is kind of like inconclusive.
Inconclusive. You have to make your own decision.
He
Uh,
believed though it was he's still kind of stuck with his gut, and he says something tells me that this is not natural.
right.
Even though he respects Robert Schock and his other divers that are super experienced, something tells him this is not natural.
No. And I agree with that. And I am in that camp where I think that this is definitely man-made. Okay. I wish that I had somebody like Robert Schock
Yeah,
on
but
our
it's a
side.
newer discovery.
Yeah,
It's
it
not
is.
around that long.
No, it hasn't. So if they dig deeper, um, maybe they'll find something that can be more concrete. Like if they find remnants of other channels or remnants of pottery or something that,
Well, unfortunately, it's
right.
like you said, it's underwater, and that area gets hit with, I think you said, typhoons.
Yeah, that the currents that come there, our ocean is somewhat like a conveyor belt, and you got currents being generated because of cold drafts, and the cold waters
It's
drop,
where
and I
somewhere
mean,
where the oceans meet.
yeah, yeah,
I think the Pacific and a different.
correct.
So
So you've got a lot of currents there, and they're very, very strong. So you are fighting the currents. It's just for your own life to a certain extent,
yeah,
and it's a very difficult dive. And then they went and dove in other caves to try to see.
if there was anything similar.
Right. And then they dove in other areas because they said, look, everybody that comes here, which I thought was interesting, he says, everybody that comes here, it's constantly fighting the currents
Yeah,
to try to stay either on top or around the monument. But let's try something. Let's see where the currents take us.
Hmm.
Let me just float with the current for a kilometer or two and see if I can find anything that could substantiate that this is man-made. And he did that, and I thought that was very cool.
Yeah.
It's very smart, I think, you know.
Just kind of see the surrounding
Yeah,
area.
because we're fighting the currents, but could we potentially find something that the currents have carried? And the answer should be yes, because that's the natural way the currents are falling. And if this was, and remember, um, this is not that deep. I think it's like 60 feet down. So that's
Um,
nothing.
is it 60 feet?
Something like that. It's
Yeah.
not very deep. It's nothing. So potentially this
I
would
think
have,
I thought it was 100
okay,
feet,
let's
but
say 100. It's
it's
still
it's right below the water, the sea level, right?
right. So it's not that deep.
No.
Okay. So that means that at one point this structure was on land. And that to me is very important because if it was on land, it could have been constructed by an ancient society. That's number one. And number two, it's been relatively underwater in the whole scheme of things for a short period of time because, you know, it was like during the ice age, that's when the ice melted, right? And then it covered it. But prior to that, it's only like 60 or 100 feet below water, which means that for sure, on this particular case,
It was above water at
for
one point.
sure,
Yeah.
no doubt about it, because they have proved that the water raised like 400 feet. So even if it's 60 or 100 feet, that's still four times the amount. So for sure,
And
it
that
was
was somewhere around
on land,
and that was somewhere around
10
10,000
to
years
12,000
ago
years
or
ago.
12,000. Yeah. So, well, I really enjoyed the research on it. I wish there was more
Concrete
concrete.
evidence.
Yeah, I wish there was more information on it. Honestly, it was hard to find
It
good
was hard to find. There's
information.
not that much.
No. And I think that has to do with it's only been around what? 30
80 since 1986,
86, so that's like 30
39 years or
38 years.
38 years.
So it only was discovered then. That's not a lot.
No, that's not a lot of time. And
No. Like the Sphinx wasn't that discovered in like the
oh
early
no,
1900s or something or
no, Napoleon was there, man. Napoleon was there with the Sphinx. So that was like,
let's see when was
oh,
the Sphinx?
Napoleon, he was in awe when he went and saw the Sphinx, and
Oh,
that's they found the Rosetta Stone. I think it's in the 1500s or
in
something.
no, in 1817 the
Oh,
first modern archaeological dig.
no, that's
No?
the dig. It was way before. Just look up Napoleon, and that'll give you when was Napoleon around? Wasn't Napoleon around?
Let me see.
It's way before that.
Okay.
Okay. Um, because ancient Egypt has been a, a tremendous source of mystery for the entire world. And the Sphinx at one point was covered by sand. You know, they had to dig around it. Um, did you find a date?
I was looking to see Napoleon.
Yeah, but
Huh.
I still think it's man-made because when you look at a few of those pictures, you see like steps and you see
Yeah,
right angles.
Napoleon was around. I think it says the battles of the pyramids, the Nile, Cairo, Abikor. This was in 1799, 8 to 1801.
Yeah, see in the 1700s.
French invasion of Egypt,
Yeah.
1800. Yeah,
So,
17.
and the Sphinx had been discovered already prior to that. So I think the 1600s or something like that. It's been around for a long time. But anyway, I still think, and if you talk to Mr. Haritaki, which is the guy that found him, he's the diver, he'll stake his life on it that it's
Yeah.
man-made. If you talk to Professor Kamura, who has dedicated 20 something years of his life to cataloging all kinds of stuff that's going around with that monument, he would stake his life that it's man-made.
Yep.
And so Robert Schoch is trying to find scientific remnants or proof of what their theories are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, and he can't find it. But for the same token, he can't also prove that it's not. He
Correct.
believes he has a theory himself.
Yeah.
The problem is that he carries a lot of weight.
But you look at those steps,
Oh no,
it's just,
I just don't see how nature could possibly do that.
and that canal.
Right,
So
that channel,
I
yeah.
I really like I said at the beginning, show us another, what Corsetti said, show us another site like this. Show us another site like this. Because even the ones that it
We're above water?
were above water, it didn't seem as precise. It was a good example,
Yeah.
but it didn't seem like the steps like as precise as this
No, I agree. I agree. I'm still in the camp that it's man-made.
one.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to throw in on this mystery?
No, I'm just a little disappointed because coming into it before doing the research for the
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
I would have bet my life that is man-made. And now I have a little bit of a doubt.
There's some doubt.
I want to believe that it's man-made,
Yeah.
you know? And I would go down there, you know? But you have to learn to scuba dive and all this stuff, so I
Well,
won't go.
we love the ancient mysteries, and I think that's why, you want to believe that. But at the same time, I think it's good that based on the what we were able to find, we stayed true to what we were able to
Oh yeah,
find.
yeah.
And look,
Yeah,
this is the reality. And like you mentioned, Robert Schoch doesn't have, that's a great point. He doesn't have a problem going against mainstream views on things.
right. And
And
then
he didn't.
there's he no, he doesn't.
No.
And then Mr. Professor Kamura,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this is out there, but now he's saying, "Hey, look, this is the lost land of Mu."
Now
Uh,
that's going into mythology and
right.
yeah.
And so when he does that, it kind of, in some eyes of some people, weakens his position a little bit. Because when you start talking about Atlantis and you start talking about the legend of Mu, and you're saying this is the remnants of the, you know, the legend of Mu,
Yeah.
then you start losing a little bit of credibility in some circles because they're saying, "Oh, wait a minute,
That's mythology.
that hasn't been proven."
Right.
Okay?
But then the example that gets brought up all the time is the one of the city of Troy,
Correct.
which came from Greek mythology, correct?
Right. Well, they thought it was mythology until it was proven,
Right. That
okay,
it
that it
really
did
existed.
exist.
Yeah. So
And in the most unique way. The guy picked up the Bible, and the Bible told him where to look, essentially. You know, he put it together. You know,
that's
I mean, it's
amazing.
not like make a right over here and a left over here, but, you know, he kind of read the Bible, and the Bible was giving pointers and,
General
yeah,
areas.
general areas. And he says, well, you know what? I'm gonna try digging here, and he wasn't correct. And then, you know, but
It's
he used the
amazing.
Bible to find the city of Troy, which was considered myth, and now it's fact.
Wow.
And there's several examples like that.
So I think having an open mind, and maybe one day we'll be able to do another podcast where there's something more concrete on this Yonaguni monument.
Right. And Jimmy, which is a tremendous researcher and he has tremendous podcasts,
Yeah.
he believes is also man-made.
Yeah.
Hancock believes that. It's just you know,
Yeah.
I still believe it's man-made.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more ancient mystery to do.
One more.
So stay tuned for next week.
Sounds good.
Thank you.